I can't recall. Oh, hey, we're live.
Oh, we're not live. We're recording.
You know what I mean. Yes. So I guess I'll do the intro.
It's your show.
Yeah, right. I guess somebody has to do it. Might as well be me. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is Comix Paradox. I'm Powerful Brandon. I am joined here today by Justin Cooper and Leo Pond.
Howdy.
Hello.
Hey guys. And we as per usual, we are covering alternate reality stories, and this week we are going to be talking about an Elseworlds from DC Comics. It's a two-parter that came out in prestige format. Titled Superman Last Son of Earth. It was written by Steve Gerber, and the pencil art was done by Doug Wheatley. It's a very interesting story, great artwork, and I love it. That's why I suggested we read it. I'm just curious as we start, and just a quick first impressions from you guys. Leo, what did you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a unique take on Superman.
For sure.
I was a little put off by his adopted parents on Krypton. But
Okay.
yeah, I really enjoyed it. And now that I've been sitting here looking at the cover reminds me of one of those from the 80s, those choose your own adventure novels.
Okay. Yeah, I that's a solid reference. I did not think of that at all.
I have that board game, I think. It's called like the Magic House or something. But yeah, choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
And
kind of is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it's almost really the principle behind like Elseworlds and What Ifs. Like, choose your own adventure. I mean, we chose it for you, but here, have fun.
Except this one has an ending.
Yes, well, in a manner of speaking, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Coop, what was your first impression of this? Just looking at the cover, cracking to the first page, even.
This is sci-fi story, which is pretty interesting, and the art reminded me of like your Andy Kubert, Adam Kubert, like Joe Kubert sort of style of it, and it reminds me very much of reading maybe like an Omni magazine or something like that from like the 80s or the 70s or something, and it's just kind of like this alternate story of what's going on. There's so many facets that tie into little pieces of the DC normal universe there. It's just got like so much pieces going on, all interwoven. He did a really good job on this, and it's got to be difficult because he's taking something that it should be a simple concept, but it's so flip-flopped on its head where it's like, okay, how is this going to work? And you have to tweak the characters just that little bit with like Jonathan Kent. Lois Lane is a great example. Tweak that character completely, but it works. So yeah. It's a fun read.
Yeah, I agree. And just as we're getting ready to dive into it, for anybody that's kind of trying to suss out what this story may be, I mean, from the title, Superman Last Son of Earth, instead of Kal-El being rocketed from the doomed planet Krypton by his scientist father Jor-El and his mother Lara, we find in 1968 that astrophysicist Jonathan Kent has discovered that there is a large asteroid that is moving towards Earth that is going to cause an extinction level event. And because of that, he's freaking out, and his wife, Martha, basically gives him the news right after he's trying to convince people to listen to him that she is pregnant. And his reaction is basically, shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, he goes through and does exactly what we know of Jor-El doing on Krypton when he finds out about the planet's imminent destruction. He tries to tell people in power about it so they can maybe try to prevent extinction, prevent people from dying. and everyone doesn't care. I mean, it's the 60s, the Cold War is in full swing. And it's basically just, oh, don't worry about it. We'll shoot it with missiles and it'll be fine. So he doesn't trust anybody because he knows he's the veracity of his statements. So he liquidates all of his assets, goes to the old farm that his father left to him in Smallville, Kansas, and starts to build a rocket that would fit both his wife and their child. Of course, she has the baby and decides to stay on Earth with him, and they shoot the rocket out into space, hoping that he'll land somewhere that there'll be sustainable environment and what have you. And there, instead of what we know of, Last Son of Earth, Clark Kent, as he was named before he was stuck in a rocket, makes his way through a wormhole all the way to Krypton, where he is discovered by Jor-El and his trusty robot servant / friend, Kal-El, which we all know is the robot from the Fortress of Solitude who serves Kal-El, serves Superman on Earth. And from there, you start to get the connections with other characters that we know of from Krypton, which are few and far between. But of course, high amongst them is Lara, Jor-El's wife, and Kal-El, Superman from our world's mother.
Did you notice that they used Marlon Brando's face from like when he was younger for Jor-El?
I did not.
Like if you look in that panel on the bottom, and actually in that one too, but the panel in the bottom center of the screen right there, like that is straight out of A Streetcar Named Desire and all that, like Marlon Brando of that age and era.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Lara!
Exactly. I couldn't place who Lara was and all that. I'm like, but I'm like, Dad is clearly Marlon Brando.
Oh yeah, I didn't even put that together. One of the things I did oh yeah, okay, I can see it. I can see that.
My son, that's my son.
I tell you, our planet Krypton will explode within 30 days. Now, something I thought was really cool too is the fact that in this they are still sticking with like the Krypton as it was established by John Byrne in 1986.
Oh, the Man of Steel, yeah.
Where they Krypton is very much an isolationist society at this point. They procreate, as we kind of saw in Man of Steel. They pulled this directly from Man of Steel, the Man of Steel miniseries done by John Byrne. They just combine genetic material to perfect their offspring. Everything is refined and manufactured. But here's the thing with John Byrne's Superman stories, and what they do here is Kryptonians wear biosuits, which actually helps to elongate their lives. They can live for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they never have to worry about like illness or anything like that. And so they as it's stated within this story, they stay away from one another because they feel that proximity is what allows societies to break down. The closer you are to people, the easier it is to be overwhelmed by your passions, not necessarily like love, but anger. And that's what causes so much strife. And right off the bat, we see how Lara does not react well to Jor-El as a person, because he's just kind of like, yeah, I'm a scientist and I do my own thing. I don't really care about what anybody else in Krypton says. And this leads him to essentially take in this young baby that lands in a crude rocket that he is alerted to, that he drags Lara with him to go look at. And so the first two people to find baby Clark Kent that lands on Krypton are Jor-El and Lara. Unfortunately, unlike when Kal-El lands on Earth, Krypton has a much, much stronger gravity and denser atmosphere than Earth. So as they open up the ship and take the baby out, Kal-El, the robot's like, Master Jor-El, this thing's gonna die soon because it's not doing well out here. So they have to rush back to his lab. There's no time for him to bring Lara back to her library where she works and what have you. And he immediately tries to save this young baby's life. He gets it into a kind of hyperbolic chamber, essentially, to help get it acclimated to the atmosphere and pressures of the planet. He also makes a note. It's kind of funny. He's like, also, never feed like a non-Kryptonian anabolic protein paste. Like, he clearly tried to give the baby some Kryptonian food, and it was not a good scene. But months go by, and he's been observing and actually like interacting with the baby, and he even says like, I'm growing really attached to this little thing. And Lara walks back in, and she's just like, "You're an asshole." And Jor-El's like, I mean, I don't necessarily think you're wrong, but why exactly?" And she accuses him of rigging their coupling. Basically, it turns out they've been chosen to have a genetic pairing, which is exactly how it would have gone down regardless, just like the Superman stories we know. But of course, Lara at this point is the only other person that knows the secret of this extra Kryptonian. We don't say extraterrestrial. This extra Kryptonian child, and he ends up going before the I guess the Science Council. Is that what they are in this? Or
I mean, Council of Elders.
Council of Elders, yeah. And he tells them, and that this is a kid that I found, and you know what? I've been raising it. It's surviving, and not only am I gonna keep it alive, but I'm teaching it, and it's gonna be my heir. His name is Kal-El. And they're like, "What? No, oh, okay. I guess that Jor-El, he's a real wacky kid, huh?" And Lara is still pretty ambivalent about the fact that she has been matched to Jor-El, and the way that Kryptonian culture works is that's it. That's who you're matched to. So nobody else. So she has been tied to this dude that she thinks is a fucking anchor. And we as you guys saw, like we get all kinds of views of Krypton that we've not normally gotten in regular Superman stories, where we get to see like them walking through the gardens of Krypton, and they make mention of the fact that their biosuits can control the humidity around them, so they always stay comfortable. It's just such a life of leisure and no hardship whatsoever for this entire population. And as they move forward, we start to see Kal-El as an adolescent, and he's learning Kryptonian history. And I found it very interesting myself to see him learning lessons and Jor-El imparting them to him, very, very matter of fact, but still with very strong lessons. And I found it not unlike Clark Kent, Kal-El, from the stories we know, learning from Jonathan Kent as he was growing up as well. I mean, did you guys make any note of that as you were moving along in the story?
I noted the story was a lot like Planet of the Apes, with like the worship of the bomb and all that. And then that kind of comes into play a little bit later on. But I thought that was kind of interesting thing. That's what that reminded me of. But Clark here has the same sort of moral compass that we see. And I mean, at age 12, he's 12 cycles old. That they'll say he still knows right from wrong, and it's inherent. It's like encoded in his DNA almost.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to know. Like, funny to say encoded in his DNA, because you could definitely say it's at the root of the character as we know. Mm-hmm. But ironically enough, I mean, the DNA of this character is wildly different, because it's not actually Superman. It really is the child of Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent, which we have not seen. Mm-hmm. This is somebody who, on Earth, he would have, at this point in this story, like his dad would have been a college professor, and his mom, I don't actually know what Martha did in this. They don't really get to that. I think
I feel like he can't catch a break, because like his dad's a douchey scientist on both.
That's true.
It's like Jonathan Kent in this one is like the most untenable character, or he's just like this long-haired sort of like hippie scientist that's like somewhat of a crackpot, but he's like good enough at what he does where people like give him leeway. It's like, oh, okay, you know, like a Hunter S. Thompson sort of character, right? Just without guns and adrenochrome and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's and then it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna give him free reign to do this and all that. And then he ends up making a rocket. You're like, okay, all right. But you don't see a lot of likability from that guy, is what I'm saying. Like the mom has like moments of empathy, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, we like her, you know, we feel for her, we want her to do well. For him, it's like, hope he dies. You know, it's just weird, you know. And then you get to this guy, and he's like, oh, I've grown fond of him, and I'm like, all right, I feel like he is a babysitter, you know, rather than like a parent, and he's just like kind of observing what's going on, and you know, he's definitely teaching him and trying to teach him the ways, but there's so much resistance. And like the interesting thing is like what I want to see from this book, like going forward at this point, I'm like, all right, well, I hope that Jor-El learns something from watching him, and I hope that he grows as a character as a result of him. So that's kind of like the part that I was looking for at this point. I'm like, all right, let's see where this goes, because this guy is like, he's this maverick scientist, you know, he's kind of like inappropriate with the woman and all that, but he's like, all right, you know, I'm just going to change all these records and stuff. He's kind of doing whatever the hell he wants, but now he's got to be in charge of something, which is very much how parenthood is, you know. So I'm kind of like looking for a big change by the end of the book for Jor-El.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Long segue, sorry, but
no, that's fine. I just did want to make note real quick too that we did briefly in the story see Perry White shortly before Jonathan and Martha launch Clark into the friggin' stratosphere, and he's actually like one of the few people who actually followed up on what Jonathan Kent was trying to say, and he found out that Jonathan Kent was 100% correct about what was going to happen to the planet, and he ends up quitting his job at the Daily Planet as a reporter because they don't want to report on that. They just want to report on what the governments are saying, which is a bunch of balderdash. You know, so it's just kind of cool to see like, oh, hey, look, there's a classic Superman character that we know, and now he's just like, oh, well, what am I gonna do with the rest of my time until the world ends? And then, you know, we kind of move along from that. Like,
that's a great line.
Bye, Earth. You know, what is cool and what we're seeing here is you know, Kal-El, as he is being called here, he has to wear an exoskeleton in order to support his frame due to the pressures of the gravity on Krypton. He has had to acclimate and work against it his entire life, and he can't, like, you know, he can't really move around without it, just small distances and such. But more to the point, his father, Jor-El, being a scientist, he is, you know, he's always trying to satiate his own scientific curiosity. And considering Kal-El's earthly origins, combined with how he's being raised here, he is a very curious individual as well as very smart. But to the point, he wants to know more about what Krypton was like before it became what it is. And Jor-El explains to him, like, there's nothing, kid. You know, anything like that, it's buried, and Krypton does not care. They do not want to know more about who they were. They only care about who they are now.
Now, that reminds me of Alan Moore, right? Like the Alan Moore Superman story with the Black Mercy, you know, for the man that has everything and all that. Yep. That took me back to this, because I'm like, that's the glimpse that you saw when he's like, oh, I'm happy being a geologist on Krypton.
Now, what were you going to say, Leo?
Well, so when I was reading it, you know, trying to, you know, put myself in place of, you know, a human transposed onto another world, you know, how would they grow up being different and everything? And, you know, I the way I saw it is Kal-El's being, he wants to explore, he wants to learn more, but the overall wanting to explore is the essence of, you know, humanity. That's how we grew. That's how we expanded our civilizations, was just trying to see what else.
Oh, Leo just froze.
Yep.
What? Damn it! I want to know what he was going to say. Yeah, he's well. Regardless, I want to give him a second. Nope. Okay, so I completely agree with what Leo was getting at there, because I was going to say something similar. The fact that his inherent curiosity as a human being is clearly one of the things driving him to want to explore and look around, because that is what has driven our species on this planet. And it's kind of fun to look at the fact that that's an inherent thing in our species that he brought with him that was not present for Kryptonians and on Krypton. And much like Kal-El showing up to Earth, he has his own special talents that allow him to change the world, hopefully for the better. Hopefully what he's able to do with that and with his own curiosity, like, will he be able to contribute to the society that he is a part of and maybe make it better than it already is? And it's just I found it to be just a really cool spin on the idea of natural talents and what have you.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you're saying too, because like, and kind of what Leo was saying, like the essence of humanity, the whole idea that's like the discovery part, and that's what like kind of pushes us on, and that is a recurring theme in a lot of science fiction, whether it's Star Trek or a little bit of Star Wars, but not as much, but like Babylon 5 and like just a lot of these, John Carter, like a lot of these things that have like the essence of being human is a character rather than a strength or a talent or anything else like that. And that's kind of what we run into with this early version of Clark. And I think at this point in the story, we're up to him being like, what, 17, 18?
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
Yeah. And it's just really cool, like that inquisitiveness. And I was saying earlier that brings me back to that Alan Moore sort of issue where, you have Superman and it's like, okay, he would be perfectly content just, running findings as a geologist on Krypton. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oddly enough, that was illustrated by John Byrne. So, but it just kind of took me back there, and I'm like, yeah, it seems like that is what he would be, and he might be happy doing that. So yeah, it was just pretty fun.
Let me ask you, can you see my screen right now?
I can't see your screen. No.
Nuts.
Nuts. I mean, nuts.
Nuts. And I have the comic book up as well, but
we're just waiting for Leo to come back.
I know. I might not let me share the screen because he was sharing his screen when he got the old bootaroo. But it stinks because
I know where we were in the book, because he had just found something. We haven't talked about it yet, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. It's killing me because I really want to put it up on the screen, but oh well. Here we go. I guess I'll just move forward. So yeah,
use your willpower.
Trying willpower. Well, funny you say that. So there is that we see young Kal-El, making his way around, exploring with his own robotic sidekick that he has named Crypto, who is white and metallic. So that's a fun little reference to what we know of as Superman's super pet. However, he's going around in his exoskeleton with Crypto, and they're checking out some artifacts. He's digging around, trying to find anything he can for any sort of historical record or just get an idea of scientifically the geology of the area. And there's a I don't know if you want to call it a Krypton quake, I guess. And
I would, yeah,
it dislodges a large area, and they start to see a green glow, an energy surge coming from a space that has been exposed because of the shuffling of the area, the ground. So he goes up to it with Kelex, and they find a large corpse that is mummified, essentially. It's a tentacled being that is wearing, you can partially see it, a Green Lantern symbol, and the glow is coming from the Green Lantern directly next to the corpse. On the tip of one of the tentacles, you can see a non-powered Green Lantern ring. And of course, Kal-El is like, "Ooh, Krypto, analyze this. What is it?" And Krypto is just like, it's a dead thing wearing some kind of ring, and that other thing right there is the source of that weird energy reading I was getting. And Kal-El is just like, "Oh, well, maybe I should pick this up and check it out." And Krypto straight up is like, "No, don't do it." And as soon as he picks it up, the lantern starts speaking to him. And it says, "Kal-El of Krypton, the light shines upon you and within you, and finds you worthy. Hold the ring of power to the lantern's flame and speak these words." And at that point, Kal-El puts the ring on, puts his hand into the lantern, and says, "In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light." And he immediately, his exoskeleton is gone. It changes into his Green Lantern uniform, which is somewhat different than what you would think. It's not a standard uniform. It's a dark blue that comes down to a triangle with a large white field coming up over the shoulders and down the sleeves to white gloves as well. But the chest field is a pentagonal shape, much like Superman's symbol, but within it, fitting against the angles of the pentagonal shape itself, is the Green Lantern logo. And he is now the Green Lantern of Sector 1104 or whatever that covers Krypton. And he's of course thrilled because he can do all this crazy stuff with this, and he can fly around, and he also doesn't need the exoskeleton to move around on his home, what he considers his home planet. And he's super pumped and wants to sell his dad. He turns to Krypton and goes, "Hey, how long has it been since we were home last?" And Krypto's like, 7 months, 4 days, 3 hours, 21. He's like, "Nope, that's enough. I've heard. Let's just go." And he starts booking it. And Krypto's like, "I can't fly that fast." And so Kal-El doubles back with the ring. He's like, "Oh, don't worry. I'll give you a ride." And Krypto's just like, "Oh, well, that's better. What should we do about your ship and everything we left back there?" "No time. We're going to tell my dad." And he makes his way back to Jor-El's lab, where he just kind of makes his way in, and Jor-El is just so distracted by something he doesn't even notice that Kal-El is not wearing his exoskeleton anymore. And of course, we come to find out that the reason why Jor-El is looking so somber and feeling so melancholy is that he is discovered that the core of Krypton is unstable. And it is actually due to what Kal-El had been looking at in the historical archives earlier in the story, where they had dealt with cloning and the Clone Wars. It's not Star Wars, gang. It's a very different thing on Krypton. Clones were used for organs to harvest, and it was
It's
monstrous.
more like The Island,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if you've ever seen Michael Bay's The Island, it's very much like what Krypton was.
Oddly enough, both starring Ewan McGregor, though.
Yeah, good call.
Huh.
Weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, he finds out that what they did back then, 10,000 years ago, it actually set off a chain reaction that has taken this long to start to rip the planet apart. And one of the earliest indications that there was a problem is this society, the members of this society, which wear these same biosuits that I had mentioned earlier, they are getting sick and dying, and they have like a green pallor when they pass away, and they call it the Green Plague, and it is essentially kryptonite poisoning coming from the core of the planet. And Kal-El, upon hearing that, he's like, "What? Nothing can be done. Well, I'll see about no with that attitude. I'll see about that. And he just takes his ring up into space and he grabs a bunch of like space debris and I shouldn't say debris, but like fragments of minerals and elements out in space and forms giant metallic rods from them and geo positions them to stress points to get to the core and just all at once uses the ring and every iota of his willpower and sends them right through the surface of the planet into the core. And Jor-El watches on his own like tectonic readouts and sees that Kal-El has taken all of this and turned this space debris into basically control rods like in a fusion reactor, and it's completely diffused the chain reaction. It's pretty cool. Like, if only there had been a Green Lantern around when Krypton exploded for the comics we know, there would be no Superman. Okay, so maybe not a great example. Maybe it was a good thing there wasn't a Green Lantern around. But regardless, still pretty cool to see in this story. And, in light of that, as we've seen in many different comics and movies and shows, Lara, who really did not like Jor-El at all, as it seemed that they were about to, all perish on the planet. Her reaction was, I have to go see Jor-El, and straight up said to him, like, I was really worried about my family, but once I stopped thinking about that, the only thing that I could think about was you. And Jor-El's reaction was pretty great because he was like,
it's a great line.
He's like, yeah, that sounds right. And she's like, well, what about me? Did you think of me? And he's like, you've never left my thoughts from the moment we met. And it's like, oh, Jor-El, you Kryptonian pimp, you.
Yep. And I mean, that's part of what I was talking about, where it's like you want to see something change in this guy, and it's like, all right, he's kind of a stick in the mud, a maverick, and all that, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can get behind him because he's a romantic.
Yep, and that's the thing is like you kind of start to see like, oh, maybe this is part of the reason why Jor-El is like such a different cat than the rest of Kryptonian society. Why he was actually capable of seeing this, this alien baby land, and he was like, yeah, you know what? No, I'm gonna take care of this kid. I'm gonna raise him. No, he's not dying on my watch. And maybe it started off as a little bit more of a scientific curiosity, but he found himself growing attached regardless of anything else. And I mean, with the cold, hard, calculated science of some place like Krypton, it seems to fly in the face of everything that they would have stood for. So, piecing that together, it's like, oh, he had an emotion, and that's probably more than most Kryptonians could say. But regardless of all that, hey, Leo, welcome back. What's happening, buddy?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, well, our internet officially went down. I've restarted the modem multiple times. So I logged in through my phone.
I see. Yeah, I don't know what happened insofar as like the sharing thing either, because I'm trying to share my screen and it won't let me. Because we're talking about comics and a visual medium, and we're using more than 1,000 words to pick that.
You should be. It could be because I was sharing, but
that's what I said. Yeah, but it's fine. Not a big deal. We're just gonna power through like we do here.
We had just gotten to the point where Kal-El had found the Green Lantern in the book, and then he had gone home to see his dad, and his dad was just kind of contemplative, and that's kind of where we are at.
Okay, and actually, if you want to try sharing your screen, I might be able to add it.
Okay, let me see here. Share screen, screen 2, and share. Nope.
No, it's there. I need to add it.
Oh, okay. Oh, you have to give permission. That
Oh,
makes
there you go. Okay, cool.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Big explosions.
All right, so yeah, that's where we were. So we got the one of the big rods coming through. I will say it's like, hey Cal, did you make sure that there weren't people in that building right there?
He totally
Please.
didn't.
I'm thinking not, probably not. But yeah, as I was saying, I mean, Lara rushes to Jor-El and she's just like, I was thinking of you, and did you think of me? And Jor-El just went full pimp status, and he's like, from the moment we met, Lara, you have never left my thoughts. And she was like, oh, you can totally mix your genetic material with mine. You know, so good
His
on
dad is
him.
totally Reed Richards. I mean, seriously.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. Actually, you know what? Let me go back here. I just want to. So this is I want to go. Yep. So this is Kal-El discovering the artifact, as it were. You know, there's the corpse, as we were saying, with the Green Lantern, and Crypto freaking out saying, "Don't touch it!" And he gives his little robot buddy a little ride on the energy sidecar of his superhero motorcycle, as it were.
The Forrest Gump moment where he sheds his exoskeleton.
Yep. Run, Kal-El, run. And he goes to see Daddy. Daddy tells him, like, planet's gonna go boom boom soon. And that's when he takes all of this debris in space and forms these giant diffusion rods and jams them through the planet's surface into the core, so it acts as control rods, like I said, much like a nuclear reactor. And that's where Lara shows up, and now we have Kal-El going around kind of checking out the damage, surveying it, much like a superhero / curious little Earth boy on Krypton would do. And funny enough, some of this building that we see him come across, it's like, all right, that looks pretty old and ancient, but for the most part, not, it's well intact. I can't imagine that being hidden. Like there's no real explanation for the exposure.
They're just ambivalent, so it's like an apathetic. They don't care. They're just leaving their shit around.
Apathetic is probably the best way to describe it, for sure.
The Kryptonian society here reminds me so much of Robotech. If either of you guys have ever watched the original Robotech, and then you get to like the series afterwards with the Masters and all that, they just didn't care. They designed all of their stuff to where it's like it didn't have to be repaired. It was just abandoned, and then they would go on to something else. So it's like, oh, okay. So they spent all of their time trying to figure out what the Earthlings had called protoculture, because they were a society of clones and things like that too. So I'm like, wow, it really kind of rings with Robotech vibes from here.
Yeah, I can dig that.
When he found these artifacts and all that, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of where they were going at too, because they were looking for this stuff. They were going through ruins and all that on like Venus and Mars and stuff like that. So
yeah, and what's kind of cool is like going through this area. I mean, Kal-El kind of gets what he was asking about when he was younger, a solid physical piece of Krypton's history, which shows what their society there was like well before the biosuits and the genetic engineering. And it looks as though people wore much more colorful clothing, and they maybe had a little bit more romance in their lives. And when I say romance, I don't mean love. I mean romance in the grander sense of the term. Romantic adventures and so on and so forth. Romantic pursuits. They were probably more inclined to the arts rather than science. And we see that right here. In this like hologram within the book that he's showing off that he found, and he's just saying, there's maybe a cure for how their culture is stagnated as much as it has, and it's probably within the confines of this artifact and the artifacts that they've unearthed. And of course he's like, and I plan on digging down deep on this after I take a long nap, because he had a big day, guys.
Yep.
A big day. And so moving forward, he's still wearing the ring, all the time, and has the lantern right next to his head as he sleeps, which I would not do.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe too from this, and I was just thinking, I'm like, you never know what's going to go on. Like that thing's going to either give you nasty headaches or cancer, so
Or
you got to
both.
be careful. Yeah, or one leads to the other. Absolutely.
But because of it, I mean, he starts to get like fragmented dreams of, basically his parents, Jonathan and Martha, just very, quick flashes, nothing that's really too discernible to him, and it's very confusing. And he's trying to figure out exactly where he's from at this point. He's never really questioned it as much, and he goes to Jor-El and starts a whole like, where am I from? Where was I born? And Jor-El tries to play it off like, oh, where all Kryptonian kids come from. You guys are all mixed together in a bottle, and then we shoot you out. And he's like, dude, I had to wear a fucking exoskeleton for like 17 years. I'm not Kryptonian. Don't come on, man. Like, I might have been born at night, but it sure as fuck wasn't last night. And and so Jor-El kind of has to like be like, no, you're still tired. Your nap was too short. Go get a juice box and a snack, and we'll talk later. and Kal-El is just like, no, Jor-El, your dad's name and your dad's name, because they're all L's. You better tell me where I'm from. Do I come from here? And dun dun dun. That's the cliffhanger in the first issue of this Prestige. So we move past that, like, am I of this world, as he wears the Green Lantern ring, and brings us to the back portion of that. So I'm just going to go to the second issue right here, issue 2 of 2, Elseworlds, Superman Last Son of Earth, where this time around we see a Superman, I should say a Kal-El as Green Lantern, and the Guardians, and clearly a guy who looks like Lex Luthor with
yeah,
a tank and what looks like some dilapidated buildings, one of which is the Daily Planet, so this must be Metropolis, and 2 Earth people, a young woman with long brunette hair, some ammo and a shotgun, and then an older gentleman with a ponytail and a jacket which inexplicably has fringe on the bottom of it.
It's like Billy Jack in the future.
Yeah, this is what they thought the future looked like in 1981. And so that's clearly we might be seeing some denizens of Earth other than Kal-El / Clark, in which we open up on Kal now sitting on like a moon, going around Krypton and just kind of enjoying the fact that in space, no one can hear you do anything, let alone scream. And he feels like he has the chance to maybe kind of meditate and focus on these things that have been popping up in his dreams and kind of, for lack of a better term, haunting him since he put on this ring, almost like it's started to unlock and try to make sense of his own memories and mind. And he's not really getting the answers to the truth of his origins that he not just wants but needs from his father Jor-El. And this has led him to think that he could maybe use the lantern and ring itself to plumb the depths of his mind, and he's about to do it. He's about to turn that ring right into his own head and be like, find out who I am, magic green ring. And thankfully, just before he does it, you guys have seen, I'm sure you read it, a voice starts speaking to him from the lantern, which we've seen in any number of Green Lantern stories. And we know that he has the ring and he's now used it. He's performed an act of heroism for an entire planet. So the next move is going to be going to Oa. You have to meet the Guardians and you have to, train or whatever. I mean, they kind of skipped the whole real training thing here for him. But I mean, I guess after you save an entire fucking planet by doing what he did, they're like, I think he has the hang of it.
Yeah, he gets it. He's got the spit curl,
Yeah, he's good. He looks a lot like this other guy I've seen before. And, so he's told, you have to come to Oa. You have to get training. And if you turn that ring on yourself, it's just going to be fucking bad news bears. So why don't you come to us? We'll tell you everything about how the ring works, and then maybe we can work on you actually, turning that thing on your brains and hopefully not turning them into mush. And he's just like, and how do I get there? And they just go, oh, we'll bring you here. And he's like, how? Directly. And just pulls him
Always love that.
light speed. And the last thing he says is Rao, which is Kryptonian for God. And so that's he gets pulled along, and of course we get a great scene of him first flying into Oa here, the central power battery right there. And I love the way that they actually designed the central power battery here on Oa. It looks great. The fact that they made it. Oh, what were you say?
I was just gonna say, if when he said Rao, are you sure it's not his Owen Wilson impression?
Wow.
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 This thing runs by willpower. I mean,
wow.
will I, won't I?
Wow. Where am I from? Wow.
Hey, I'm a car. What?
What?
Sorry, I just
no, you don't have to apologize at all. It's great.
I love that when you get a good Owen Wilson as Superman as a Green Lantern. Now that's how I'm going to read this book.
Forever.
Up here trying to save Krypton? Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Tell me the truth about my origins.
Yeah. Wait, I'm a variant?
Wow. So it's kind of cool because due to the fact that Kal-El has been on isolationist Krypton for so long, much like a human being would react. He sees all these other creatures and what have you, and his first reaction is, whoa, these creatures are certainly strange looking. And right away they're like, no man, they're not strange, they're just different than you. Like maybe you're the strange one, dickhead. And it's kind of cool that they make a point of that right away. But he makes his way to the Guardians, and they kind of give him a quick overview, like, oh, the Guardians have been around for 3 billion years. And then he's like, wait, I know that voice. You're the weird voice speaking to me through the lantern thing. Are you my friend? And the guy's like, well, I'm certainly the voice that's been speaking to you for sure.
I took that as Ganthet. I don't think they named him, but I mean,
no,
it's like,
yeah, I figured it was Ganthet too. They, but it's okay that they didn't specifically name the Guardian. Like, keep them all kind of ubiquitous. It's just like, okay, what you seen one Guardian, you seen them all, I guess. And he actually does make a point. Like, I can teach you how to do the thing that you want to do, but it's pretty dangerous. So even if we get you to the point where you can access yourself like that, I'll be here to make sure you don't let the power rings charge go out while you're doing this, because once that 24 hours is up, if you're still in your head, you're done. You'll be stuck in a loop forever. It's really easy to lose track of time, but keep in mind, even if I can pull you out, you may just turn your brains to mush. And of course, Kal-El is like, no, I have to know. And he starts to access some of these memories fairly quickly, it seems. I mean, it just says weeks later, but the Guardian's just like, all right, you've sequestered your will, and you've pierced the veil of the unconscious. Now abandon yourself to the ring, and boom, there you go, like a huge vision of like his mom, dad, and a horse in front of a barn in Smallville. He just hears like a couple fragmented sentences, like, my family name, and back in Metropolis, and room for you and the baby, post-impact tides. And, that's that. And, we move along, and, Kal-El is just kind of like, cool. It sounds like they were pretty friggin' worried and scared that they were about to die, and inexplicably strapped their baby to a rocket and shot it into space. So,
as you do.
Like you do. And, of course, Guardian's like, yeah, it, kid. It's just like you read about. And, he's just kind of like, woe is me. And that's all I could get after all this training. And I don't want to risk the dangers of going through that again. And the Guardian's just like, you kind of forget where 3 billion years old. We've cataloged like most of the known universe, and you're an example of the life on that planet. We're pretty sure we can find them based on your fucking DNA. And he's like, oh, cool. So like, what do I do? He's like, oh, stick your ring in and into this computer, and it'll suss out what the most likely planet you're from is, and yada yada yada. To which I say, couldn't you have just used his DNA to find out what planet he was from to begin with, and just go from there?
Just thinking that, yeah.
This was a bit nebulous because they're like, because of science we will find where you live. You have a Green Lantern in that sector, and the Green Lanterns collect to like a hive mind sort of central battery that has all the data in it. So it's like you could just search the matrix for it. So,
and not to be too critical, but to be critical.
No, do it, man.
Just calling back to the beginning when Jonathan and Martha launched him into space. The original plan was for Martha and Clark to be launched into space, wait for the asteroid to hit, and then come back when it was safe, right?
Correct.
So how was Clark supposed to do that if he was alone?
Well, see, that's the thing. Comics. No, you're right. It doesn't make sense. I mean, quite frankly, that's not even the biggest issue I had. The fact of the matter is, the size of the asteroid that was going to hit the planet was basically the same size as the asteroid that created the fucking Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, and we'll get to that part, I'm sure, because that's the whole thing too, where we literally watch two characters watching the impact, and then one of those characters shows up again. You're like, really, comic?
Well, also they say it hit Asia, but when the rocket's launching, you see the asteroid fairly close to it.
And I don't want to give anything away. I'll get back.
Yeah, we'll get to that point. But I will say, like, if we're going based on strict realistic science, the asteroid that hit, it actually would have completely changed the Earth altogether. The kind of stuff that would have happened, it would have eradicated most life, and it would have started a whole new cycle of evolution that would have taken hundreds of thousands of years, starting with likely like amoebas again, and anything that was on two legs would have been 2 legs and over 5 pounds likely would have been completely eradicated. That's exactly what they theorize and posit happened on this planet already. The seas would have boiled, and all the debris that was thrown up from the impact would have completely covered the atmosphere, and it would have stayed like that for at least a year in the atmosphere, which would have completely, the heat alone from the asteroid hitting would have destroyed most of the fauna, would have destroyed most of the plant life on the entire planet. So like anything, him going back there, it would have been completely untenable. Just unlivable. But once again, this is a comic, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. For all we know, maybe they were able to launch at least a couple of missiles at the thing, and it broke the asteroid up, and it was just a smaller yet still kind of large chunk that hit Asia. Let's give the benefit of the doubt, like I said. But moving forward, it just seems like they could have just skipped the whole dangerous portion when Kal-El could have turned his fucking brain into alphabet soup and just been like, yeah, dude, like, you're from there, so let's just take a sample of your blood or put your fucking thumbprint on this and figure out what species you are and where you're likely from. That seems like it would have been much easier. And I actually think that, I know they were going for like a cool scientific dramatic beat, but it would have been just as good and sensible if he had made his way, went through regular Green Lantern training, and then they were like, okay, now we're going to help you figure out where you're from. Here it is. You know what I mean? Like you could have gotten a little bit more with someone like Kilowog and like Tomar-Re. And
I didn't see Tomar in this, but
I did not
mean,
either.
We did see Kilowog, and it was a pretty good version.
Yeah, it was. But you know, they could have played up a little bit more of the Green Lantern stuff in this. I mean, you're right there on Oa. They really like fucking Martin Campbell, Ryan Reynolds it up in this. Being like, oh look, he's been on Oa for 2.5 pages. Well, time to go to Earth.
That's the best part of that movie, though. Like that Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie, like all the parts on Oa, I'm like, yes, give me more Sinestro, give me more of Tomar-Re, give me more of I think Salak is in there. You know, it's like throw all those things in there. Let me see more of those concentric green circles that they're making with the constructs. That was a great part of a movie that was just like really flawed. But I'm like, you know what? It's got good pieces to it. So
well, the issue with that movie is they didn't know what kind of movie they were trying to make. It was 2 movies in one. I mean, it was very Cronenbergian with everything that was happening with Hector Hammond.
Oh my god, yeah,
a lot of body horror there. It was like a completely different movie, and then you get to the stuff with Ryan Reynolds, Hal Jordan, and there's like the space adventure stuff. But they still, with Green Lantern, the character in it, they still fell victim to what I call Masters of the Universe itis, and that is like, oh hey, here's a cool fantastical story with this great power and a character that has to deal with the responsibility that comes along with it, and it's on a cosmic, like, universal scale. So let's make sure that we have the vast majority of this cool universal cosmic thing take place on Earth in California.
yeah,
Cool.
and an airfield.
Yeah, like, no man, like, listen, I signed, like, when I watched Masters of the Universe, I wanted to see He-Man and Skeletor with their respective crews fighting it out on Eternia. I didn't want to see some fucking dwarf named Gwildor trying to steal a bucket of KFC from somebody in a fucking parking lot. Just
Wait a minute,
saying.
we did see that.
What?
What are you saying? We did see that.
All right, so spoiler alert: we're gonna see Kal-El steal a bucket of KFC from somebody in
What
a
are
parking lot.
These are ribs. They eat animals.
Oh my god. But yeah, so
welcome back to our podcast about the Masters of the Universe movie.
Right.
Next, we're going to talk about stop motion.
so as it is at this point, Kal-El and maybe Ganthet have sussed out that he is likely from Earth, and so Kal-El's like, well, that's where I'm gonna go, Sector 2814. Catch you later, blue dudes. And he just makes his way off. Like, he doesn't have responsibilities in the sector that he's from. Great job, buddy. Hey, how do you think Krypton was destroyed without a Green Lantern being there the first time? Stupid.
They refused the help, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that actually is what they did. Yeah. That's canon, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like,
it's because of the isolationist society, which they've touted throughout this story, which I will say, it's good that they've made that a sticking point for Krypton in this. I like that a lot. And the fact that he was able to stay there, not because of Jor-El, but that, like, the Council of Elders didn't say, like, nah, get rid of your science experiment. They very easily could have done that. But once again, like, because of Jor-El and who he is, they're like, all right, fine. We like your dad and we really like your granddad, so we'll let you do your thing, but don't fuck around too much, buddy. We'll have to fucking put the boot down.
It's got some Star Trek aspects to it as well, like with Spock and Spock's father Sarek. If anybody's watching Star Trek Discovery, you have like that aspect with Michael, who is essentially Spock's younger sibling, who is an adopted Earthling that was raised as a Vulcan. So you kind of have like those aspects going on too.
What is his therapy bill like? Good God. my mother never told me she loved me. Well, she's Vulcan. And
yeah, it's illogical.
She's not gonna, dude. Maybe not with that attitude.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he makes his way across the galaxies and gets to, Sector 2814, System Sol, Earth. and he gazes upon the surface of the planet, and he's like, well, that looks like an absolute hellscape. It's nothing but swirling, grimy, dusty atmosphere, and he makes his way, he touches down on the planet and checks out several different points across the geography. Asia, which he says, informs us through his own inner monologue that it was the point of impact, which we had mentioned earlier. And he mentions that it must have wiped out life on this continent almost instantly. And that's pretty big. I mean, Asia's fucking huge. And then he makes his way to Alaska. Themyscira is one of the places he looks upon, and he actually says to himself, an island, its people incinerated and buried by the eruption of an undersea volcano. And then to Atlantis, which he is a bit incredulous. He's like, amazing, a subaquatic civilization, but it too has perished. He actually says that, but it too has perished. And then makes his way to Gotham City, which I thought this was awesome. A great reference to what we know of canonically in the Batman stories. Gotham City. The tectonic shifts resulting from the impact must have been cataclysmic. I mean, as we all know, Cataclysm was the precursor to No Man's Land. Yep. Cataclysm, the massive earthquakes that hit Gotham, and then leading to basically, Gotham being a full-on No Man's Land / demilitarized zone, as indicated by the United States government. Like, nope, you're not part of us anymore. Good luck, assholes. And he just kind of is bouncing around, trying to get a feel for what this planet is, and he comes across a friggin' schooner with some torn up sails, and
the schooner is a sailboat.
Schooner is a sailboat, stupid head.
And I wasn't sure if this was Thomas Dolby or if this was the guy from Prodigy, but who is this character from Waterworld that he runs across?
Yeah, for real. Either way, he's probably pissing into a Mr. Coffee to try to get Taster's face.
Yeah, he's like...
Yeah, that's right, Leo, I said it.
It's like, wow, Sting, you survived. I will kill him!
You don't have to put on the red light. Wonderful. So Kal-El...
So well timed. Leo was such a sniper.
And that's when we find out, we've been seeing all the interactions that Kal-El has had, since he's been walking around and talking with Jor-El and stuff, and the Guardians as well. But he starts trying to speak to this guy in the sailboat, and he's like, oh wait, I can't understand that dude, and he can't understand me. I wonder if the ring can translate. And that's because Kal-El is speaking Kryptonian, and that dude is speaking some language from Earth. I mean, we can't necessarily assume that it's English, but he kind of gives Kal-El a quick lowdown. He's just like, who are you? Oh, I'm Green Lantern. And then the guy, he asks, like, how many people are alive here? Like, and the guy's like, I don't know, 1 million, maybe 2. That's kind of like what I've heard. But like, where exactly did you come from again? And Kal-El kind of takes the guy's ship and from saving him from the storm and the huge waves, and flies him all the way into Metropolis with his ship, which, if I were that dude, I'd be like, dude, could you just like drop me at the bay? Because
yeah, right.
This is how I fucking get food. I fish, and you're really fucking me over right now. But no time for that. I have to find other people. I have to find people more important to you and never speak to you again.
Where's Bibbo?
Where's the Ace of Clubs?
Yeah.
And he's my favorite.
Suicide Slum. Yeah.
And so he makes his way into the city, and then he finds that there's a series of speakers going throughout the remains of Metropolis that are saying some pretty fun things. The first thing we see is miracle that mankind has lasted this long. And he notes to himself, like, it's an amplified voice. Some sort of barricade is up ahead. There are people here. And he makes his way after dropping the dude and his ship in the middle of Suicide Slum, like you do. And he hears more of the the messages coming through the speakers that have been set up, and they sound just wonderful. Just a clearly pleasant man has been making these messages for everyone to hear, and they are saying things such as, "Any one man is like a single stick, pliant and easy to snap. But bind many sticks together, my friends, and you create something stronger, a column that will not bend and cannot be broken. We of the hypersector are agents of destiny. If humanity is to survive, we must bring the people of Earth together to form that single unconquerable column. And I, Lex Luthor, promise you, we shall march at the fore of the column. We shall be the architects of a new civilization." And that's when we gaze upon his oh-so-bald visage right above where he's actually standing. And oh, what a lovely symbol Mr. Luthor is using.
Yeah, this was kind of like a holy cats moment, I'll say, because I turned the page and I was like, what is this?
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially Times Square that he is set up in. And to see the symbolism being used, I mean, the two L's interlocking slightly on a red field, clearly designed to be reminiscent of the Nazi swastika from the Third Reich during World War II. And Luthor has just a ridiculous gaggle of people that are there, clearly soldiers and followers of his, of this hypersector that he's mentioned, and he's giving a full-blown, megalomaniacal, narcissistic speech, which looks to be, to an idiot, it would be like, oh, he really cares about us and he wants us all to do well. But we as readers and people not stuck in this hellscape realize, no, that dude's a fucking maniac, and he doesn't care about any of you. He just wants power and control because he's fucking Lex Luthor. And of course, he lays into all the heroes who are dead and weren't able to save them. He holds up a placard for the JLA citing their ineptitude, which I do find odd. I feel like it should have been the JSA, not the JLA.
I was wondering about that too, because you've got the JLA, which would have been at this point a Green Lantern, which would have been Hal Jordan, right? Barry Allen Flash, Dinah Lance for Black Canary, Martian Manhunter, and then eventually Oliver Queen. So that was like your first JLA, but it doesn't quite compute with what we have a little bit later when the other Green Lantern shows up.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's some, I don't want to say anachronisms, but there's just some weird stuff. But once again, you have to. It's an Elseworld, and it's not like too serious an issue. This is not canon for anything, so they're just having fun with it, and I get that. Like,
yeah, it's like the last one with the Xavier stuff, where it's like you have to take some of the continuity, where it's like it's an X-Men book, so you have to just accept it. It's like not going to all fit together.
Yeah, like, listen, we know that certain things. There are tropes and things that we're hitting upon, but also, like, let's suspend disbelief because we're still talking about a fucking human infant that was rocketed into space and was landed on another planet and raised there, and now has come back as a fucking ring-powered superhero. If like you've gotten to that point, but you see like a JLA placard instead of a JSA one, and you're like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, I have questions specifically about the infrastructure of this new world. Shut up and read it.
So is this mostly barter, or
yeah.
I mean, what is it? Is it goods and services? Do they have currency? I'm not going to be able to read anymore until I know it.
Gold-backed or silver-backed? I mean,
your paper is paper. I'm telling you, just
how
paper.
do they eat and breathe and other science facts?
You should really just relax.
Oh, of course. Yes.
But yeah, we hear Lex Luthor giving this wonderful speech that would make Adolf Hitler just blush with glee, and he starts talking about not just the fact that these quote unquote heroes may have had the power to actually save them, but didn't, and they perished themselves. But when they did, he cites Themyscira, the paradise island that Wonder Woman is from, and says there was an island, some thought it a myth, named Themyscira. The people there held secret knowledge, which they kept to themselves. They too were destroyed, their precious secrets buried with them, all because they could not walk in step with the rest of us. And this whole dying world is weaker for it. And, he's basically saying, like, we're the strong. We survived. If they were so smart and they were so great, where are they now? So that's why we're going to take care of everything. We're going to run everything. And, of course, the we in that is the royal we. He means he. He will take care of it. And Kal-El, remarks to himself that, he's seen this same kind of zealotry from the historical records when they almost destroyed Krypton because of the cloning and the Clone Wars, 10,000 years ago. So he's just like, nah, I don't dig on this. And he decides he's going to maybe do something about it, but he wants to find out who the other people that they might want to take out are. And he kind of flies around and happens upon, of all places, the Daily Planet building that's still standing. And look at this redheaded guy hanging out on the top of the Daily Planet. It's like he meets him and they instantly become kind of like pals. It's Jimmy Olsen, gang. Who'd have thunk? And
certainly not the Spin Doctors.
Well, good thing he doesn't have a pocket full of kryptonite, am I right? And Kal-El kind of introduces himself, and I'm a visitor. I've come to offer my help, which is kind of great. It's like kind of sort of like, who are you? A friend.
I've showed up to fix your Xerox machine.
And that's all. And it's kind of cool because Jimmy's right away like, oh, you should meet the chief, which the second you hear that you're like, oh well, I guess Perry survived after we saw him quit the Daily Planet all those years ago. And as they're struggling to move a generator around the building and what have you, Kal-El uses his ring, and they're all like, oh, look at him move things with that green ring energy, and what the hell is your deal? And Perry White introduces himself, and he's just, kind of saying like, I just wanted to see what the tribes were like, and those other dudes, they sound like bad news, and it seems to me like you might need some more assistance because it looks like you all are just trying to survive, and that dude's gonna kill you. And so, Perry's just kind of like, oh, whatever. They've tried 100 times before, and we've always stopped them, so they can go pound sand. And Kal-El, he's kind of taking a look around, and Perry gives him an example, like that kid right there in the wheelchair, Luthor would have that kid killed because he's useless, and that's exactly the kind of stuff we fight against. That's not what humanity is about. And kind of trying to go around and get the lay of the land, Perry also has his right-hand woman come over and meet Kal-El, and her name is Martha Kent. And he's telling come give the new kid the tour of the school kind of thing. And leaves it to her to kind of start asking him some questions, do a little bit investigative digging on some of his background. And I found it interesting. Did you make note of anything as she first shows her face, asking where he came from? Do you see the way they drew her look?
Yeah, I was really trying to see if I could recognize her as an actress or something like that. It was kind of obvious with the red hair who this was. At first, I'm like, it's not a Spider-Man comic, so we know who this is.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's his mom, Martha. Why'd you say that name? Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I do think it's interesting to note this came out in 2003. And at that point in time, Smallville had been on the WB for a few years. And if you look, there's actually a little bit of a similarity between Annette O'Toole and the way they designed the older Martha in this book.
Yeah, at some points there is, but then there's that that bottom page right there where she's got kind of like the double chin going on. Like it's like
the jowl. Yeah,
that's a bad angle, you know. So I'm like, yeah, kind of. I can't place though. Can you place who Perry looks like?
No, not at all.
Yeah,
not even close. But I will say one of the things that I thought was really interesting too here was when she asked like where he's from, and he just says, "Oh, I was raised on a distant planet called Krypton." And then the next panel is just a quiet beat, and she's still looking at him. And like I can't help but think they did that because she's looking at him like he looks like my dead husband. You know what I mean? Like just seeing a similarity between this handsome young man that showed up and Jonathan. I feel like that's what they were going for there. Did you guys pick up on that at all?
I personally could do without this entire scene. You could cut it, and I would be.
Oh
fine.
yeah, that's fair. I'm not. Listen, I'm not standing in defense of the scene. I'm just commenting on what we read.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I didn't pay much mind to it because I was like, of course she survived, and I had a harder point dealing with that, like I was alluding to earlier. So they're watching it come down, and these guys are on a farm in Kansas and all that. And to your point, a cataclysmic event that would cause dust in the air and block out sunshine, like extinction level event. But like these two people who happen to be prepping, at a farm in Kansas and sent out a rocket and all that, he dies and she doesn't. And I'm like, I'm having a harder time understanding why she's still alive at this point than like, oh, she's thinking it's her son. I just, it really took me out of it. Like, what's her story? Like, because I'm just left kind of thinking it's like, well, what the hell happened?
Okay, that's fair. And listen, I completely agree and understand why this scene is just kind of like,
it's so on the nose, it's like, yeah, I get it. Like they're going to have your mom there. So it's like, yeah.
Although I did get a kick out of like the last panel in it because, as you're reading, she's kind of like asking these questions and she walks him down to this area where, truck is being parked or worked on or whatever. And, she just kind of does like the typical, like middle-aged, like older / mom thing. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, so do you have like a girlfriend or a wife at home? And he's like, no, nothing like that. And she's like, oh, too bad. Lois. Like, that's how she calls Lois over. I'm like, oh, wow. So,
all right, this next part I did like. So, but yeah.
This part right here.
Wow. I feel like it's that Saturday Night Live Schmidt's Gay part where like Chris Farley just pulls down his shades, and it's like that never-ending sort of loop where you have Superman and Lois, and like she is literally the epitome of this guy's dream in any reality, and I dig that.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was cool. And like I said, the introduction, how Martha is just like automatically like this is an alien with a fucking space weapon that just showed up.
He's got a space ring and all that.
And the last question she asked him was if he has like a girlfriend or a wife. He says no, and she's like, "Okay, hey Lois," and then gets her over. And Lois is Lois, man. I mean, she's cool as a cucumber, man. So
dude, she's fierce. I mean, like this is the same Lois in like the New 52 or like Flashpoint that like led Frankenstein and Grifter and all that against like the Lex Luthor regime and all that. Like she's always fierce, and it just fearless to the point where it's like, yeah, you're not going to contain this woman. Good luck.
Not
in any reality.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool. Like, he goes through and starts like, I'm a Green Lantern, and I use this power ring, which I after the power battery. That's what I'm named after, and I use that to recharge my ring. And of course, that's important to pay attention to. That he said that to Lois, and right there, almost right on time. There's an alarm that goes off, and it's battle stations. Everybody get ready to fight and hopefully not die. So they all start making their way to their sandbags and walls in respective areas of fighting and what have you. And, of course, Lois is one of the folks there that's like commanding shit and right there on the field with everybody. I mean, I like to think it's probably because she actually, is pulling from watching her father in the military and growing up around that. If he survived, I mean, I would imagine there was probably some kind of military influence for some of the survivors on this planet. But there's Luthor coming through their barricades with all kinds of tanks with huge spikes around them, because that's what you need on tanks is big old pointy spikes, because a tank isn't enough, I guess. And he's given all kinds of commands through a radio to everybody that's out there fighting on behalf of him, willing to lay down their own life for, the glory of Luthor and the hyper sector.
Who's driving the VW bus, do you suppose? Because there's like 3 tanks. There's a VW bus in the middle of and then there's like some all-terrain vehicles or like fuel things, and I'm like, this is like the weirdest version of Mad Max, where it's like,
as opposed to all those normal versions of Mad Max.
Well, I mean, you think about it, it's like you don't make that choice if it's like, oh yeah, you've got to like outrun this or outrun that. It's like you don't pick like the least aerodynamic and like tippable vehicles and such. It's like, yeah, man, it's got a V6. Really? Yeah.
You do if they're the only vehicles available.
Well, clearly they have tanks. So, but I was just like, all right, who's in that? I'm like, is Scooby in that?
Zoinks! Like, whoa, Scoob! I think that bald guy's using us as cannon fodder.
I was gonna say either Cheech or Shaggy.
Yeah, Cheech, right? We're gonna take over the proletariat.
Hey, man. Oh god, yeah, fucking Cheech and Chong, nice dreams, fucking falling right behind the goddamn tanks. Dave's not here, man. But yeah, so they go to attack, and Kal-El's ready to just like, hey, I got a power ring, let me just fucking blast them to Kingdom Come. And Perry's like, no, he doesn't even know you're here. Like, let's let them think that they're gonna win. And then we'll use the element of surprise and waste their asses. And they start to attack. And Perry's freedom fighters there, as I think of them in my head, they start going up against the hyper sector. And finally, after watching enough people get killed and hurt, Kal-El says, no, that's it. I'm stepping in. And he puts up an energy shield with the Green Lantern symbol on it and starts doing his flyboy routine, and goes to pick up he picks up a tank, keeps it over his head with a giant energy construct, and he starts speechifying, and he says, this battle is over, return to your encampment and do not trouble these people again. They are under my protection and I will not tolerate. And that's when the Ring has something to say, and what the Ring says is and completely craps out on him, and Kal-El goes, no, and falls all the way to the ground because he forgot to charge his ring, and then the tank falls directly on his fucking skull.
I would have loved to have seen them animate some onomatopoeia or something like that for like the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah, I just love Luthor's reaction. Like, the very next thing that's said at all is the fucking tank falls on his skull after he hits the ground with a thonk. And the next thing anyone says is Luthor over the radio saying, grab his corpse and let's return to the base. You know what? Reasonable. Absolutely.
Classic Luthor.
And they make their way there, and of course Lois and Perry and Jimmy are like, holy shit, like they took that dude Kal-El, and what the hell does that mean? Like, Luthor has the ring, and what's he gonna do with it if he can figure out how to use it? And that's when Lois goes, wait, the lantern, that's what he uses to recharge the ring. He told me about it. Maybe we could like get it to him. And Jimmy, being the ever helpful cub that he is, he's just like, oh, I know of a tunnel underground that was like abandoned, and it was like a public works project, and they were like running telephone cable or something like that. I like to think it was probably the start of Project Cadmus, and that's neither here nor there. But I mean, under the tunnels under the ground in Metropolis, that seems likely. And
or Mannheim's like smuggling guns and stuff.
Maybe. Well, in the
like
60s,
Intergang.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah, like they he's just like, I read all about it, and nobody believed that this was blah 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 blah. And they get to the end of the tunnel, and we see that they found like a wooden blockade at the end of it. And it's like, oh, the old courthouse is still standing, right? Like, what about the jail? Maybe we can get there from here. And he's like, oh, I figured that's where they're holding him. And, hey, wait, hold on. And she's just like, Luthor has the ring. And, I'm sorry. Like, they open it up and they're just like, oh, shit, I guess because it's old doesn't mean that it's deserted. There's fucking people here. And they grab the two of them and the lantern, and Lois freaks out because now they have them, the ring, and the lantern, and they're locked in a cell. And as she's like wringing Jimmy by his little redheaded neck, freaking out on him, they just hear like kind of in semi-broken, also wounded English, like, "Wow, why'd you?" And they're just like, "Kal-El! Holy shit! How are you alive?" And he's just like, "Where's the lantern?" And
I've got a headache.
and he's just like, great. So you brought it here, and that bald asshole has it, and now we're all screwed. So you've given him all the power in the fucking galaxy, and I'm just stuck here basically in the same exoskeleton I had to wear my entire life until I found that ring. I'm a fucking weakling, and you've done this to me. And he punches the wall, the concrete wall, and leaves a gigantic fucking dent in it. And he then looks down at his fist as Lois and Jimmy stare at him. And then Lois's reaction is great. And she's like, if that's what you call weak, I'd hate to meet your big sister. And he's like, holy shit. And he rips off the door to his cell, and he gets them out of their cell, and he's just rushing through, and they try to warn him like, no, Kal-El, don't, they have guns. And he's just already too far ahead, and they shoot him. And it turns out that apparently nothing less than a bursting shell can penetrate his skin. And he goes and takes out a bunch of those dudes that are trying to shoot him and Lois and Jimmy, and takes their guns, gives them to Lois and Jimmy. And the guys say to him like, you ain't human. And that's when he says in front of them, that's the strange thing. I thought I was. To which we see an exclamation point over the heads of both Lois and Jimmy, as if they were characters out of, Metal Gear Solid. And, of course, that means like, wait, what? You thought he was human?
So he's going to spend the rest of his time in a box.
Oh man. And, they start sounding the alarms and everything there and saying jailbreak and what have you. And Kal-El's jumping around and lifting up tanks and all that happy horse shit. And he pulls open, spreads open an electrified gate, makes his way through. It weakens him. But then, he can't get through all the way. He decides to pick up one of those tanks and smash through it. And look at that, gang. We get ourselves a full-blown homage to Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman, and its cover, where we even have the guy running in fear, holding each side of his head like, woe is me, that Superman might hurt me. I might be on the wrong side of history, fellas. And, they make their way to Lex, who, of course, has the lantern and the ring, and, he's a dickhead, so it's not going to work for him. He doesn't have the 24-word password to break into it. And, Kal-El calls his bluff. He's like, go ahead, use the ring. Just atomize my fucking brain. Do it now. Yeah, that's what I thought. You can't. Meh, give it back. And he takes it. and does a classic like grab the wrist, break it, like Zod flip around like from Superman 2 kind of thing, and says the Lantern's oath, and is able to utilize the ring again, and get Luthor squared away, and get his friends back to safety. And he's standing around talking with Lois, trying to figure out what this means for him now. And he says, I don't know what to do. Do I return to where I was raised, like the only home I've ever known, or do I pledge everything that I can do now with this ring to Earth and the people here? And that's when the Lantern speaks up again. It's like, you don't own the ring, dude. You are the Green Lantern of Sector 1104 or some business. You can't pledge it. I'm sorry, 1003. That's he's Green Lantern of Sector 1003. And it says, you are responsible for protecting all life in that sector, not a single world. Earth's sector already has a Green Lantern, one who is served with courage and wisdom. And he's like, but I need to stay. Like I'm needed. What if I choose to stay? And they said, you can give up the ring. You don't have to be Green Lantern. Like, we always gave you a choice. We'll let you take the rest of the ring's power cycle to make up your mind, and then you let us know. And so, at that point, Kal-El's like, oh, it's on like Donkey Kong, son. And he's like, Lois is like, what are you gonna do? He's like, I don't have time to fucking talk to you. I got shit to do. And starts darting all across, and he manages to create somehow create a Crypto 2.0 based on the Kryptonian schematics and technology that he grew up with, and therefore is able to create some like atmosphere scrubbers, which, funny enough, we saw in the last issue of What If that we covered with Professor X and being the Juggernaut. He did the same thing. He cleaned the atmosphere with levitating air scrubbers.
So real quick, my thought was here that he went back to Krypton to get him.
Oh,
because his robot friend is there.
Maybe. Oh yeah, I didn't. Yeah, you might be right. I mean, the Green Lantern ring would be able to make him fly at light speeds. Honestly, so
I wish they gave that thought to this too. So, because there's parts of this that are kind of sloppy. So it's like that's probably one of them where it's like what Leo said is a great answer, and that should be the answer. But now it's just headcanon.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, Leo. And quite honestly, I've had this book for years, and that thought never occurred to me. So it's a fucking excellent point, dude. Yeah. Well, you know what? He must have used the ring and opened or found a nearby wormhole similar to the one that got him to Krypton from Earth as a child, and that's that. And if anybody has anything different to say, I don't care. That's how it happened.
Yeah, that's where we're at now. So
yeah, that's we've decided that's what happened, gang. So make up your own story, but it's not as good as the one we just made.
We did say it's to choose your own adventure, so
that's true. That is true.
True.
So he goes and then makes his way across the planet, and he's doing everything he can to clean up areas and get things in a tenable, safe environment, and get things set up so maybe there can be agriculture and learning. He goes to Themyscira and is able to save one of their libraries and brings it all the way to Metropolis to give to Perry's freedom fighters, and says like, yo, there's a lot of cool stuff in here, and you could probably use that to help not just recreate your society, but maybe make it better than it was before. And he's like, I did all this so I don't have to worry about all of you when I go back to Krypton and continue being the Green Lantern of Sector 1003. And thanks for so long. Thanks for all the fish. You guys take care of yourselves. And Lois is just like, wait, hold on. So like you're peacing out here? Maybe wait, don't tell me that you're leaving just yet. I want to tell you something. And she goes over and whispers into his ear in front of Martha, and then it shows Kal-El's reaction right here as he goes like completely wide-eyed looking at Martha, and that's when we see in the next page sometime later Abin Sur,
Yeah.
the Green Lantern of Sector 2814, shows up to retrieve Kal-El of Krypton's Green Lantern and ring because he has decided to give up that mantle to stay on Earth. And he's just saying like, I don't know if it's the right decision. I just know it's the best decision for me to make right now, and I'm willing to do the work. These people, I think, need me a little bit more than the place where I was born and raised. And Abin Sur is, he's pretty cool. Abin Sur is like pretty much always cool, no matter what. And that's one of the worst parts about his character is like you really are just like, damn, like why did this dude have to die to give Hal Jordan his ring? If he had just stayed alive, it might have been a bit better for everybody.
Yeah, he's like super level-headed and lacks emotion for the most part and all that. But like, yeah, he's cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, and like it's actually like he's really nice to Kal-El like here. And he's just like, hey, you were chosen to be a Green Lantern, and you did some great stuff while you were still a Green Lantern. Once a Green Lantern, always a Green Lantern. And I don't expect anything less than a great destiny from you, and the universe will be watching essentially. And that's really cool. He could have just been like, give me this shit, all right, later. Just treat it as a task he was sent by the Guardians to perform, and that's that. But instead, he did exactly what a Green Lantern should do. He inspired hope, and he supported the work and dream of a people that is going to be at it for a long time. And also because they're right there on his radar, he likely will be stopping by and checking in on them because they are also aware of his presence, which is interesting to keep in mind, but what's great is like, that's where we leave Kal-El. He's now on Earth, and he is essentially Superman. He is at the same power levels that Superman was at when he was created in 1938 by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. He's incredibly strong. Bullets can't pierce his skin. Likely he can jump, he can leap tall buildings in a single bound. At that point, that meant that Superman could jump 1/8 of a mile just at a leap. And it leads us directly into an epilogue on Krypton, where we see the Council of Elders kind of wide-eyed and almost terrified looking. And the next shot down we see here is of, that we see, no, father, I do not, nor does Lara. It's clearly Jor-El and Lara, but we see green pants and red boots on Jor-El and bare knees and violet boots on Lara. And then the very next panel, it shows them in their classic costumes, a classic character design from the 30s and 40s, where Jor-El had a green outfit with a yellow sun and a red corona, and Lara was wearing a short dress, that kind of came up to the neck and bare shoulders. And it's very vintage looking design for both of them, and it's juxtaposed directly to the biosuits that had been set up by John Byrne and all the cold scientific era. And it's because of the book that Jor-El's holding, which contained that holographic history, which was unearthed and Kal-El found and presented to them. They actually learned more about who they were and what they came from. And Kal-El was right that what they could find in their own history would probably help this stagnating culture, how it had been locked in a stasis and not moving forward, just plateaued. And the fact that Jor-El and Lara are standing before them saying, holding hands, showing physical affection towards one another in proximity, as opposed to the isolation that they've all imposed upon one another. And seeing that the consequences of living for centuries, but without any sort of closeness to any one or thing, isn't really a life worth living. And so they shed their biosuits. They're wearing garments much like their ancestors would have, And now they realize that because of this, it's going to make each moment past that something worth cherishing, because they know that they're going to be finite. And if everything else, if every moment is infinite, then every moment has no value, because it's just going to be the same. And the Council of Elders is just kind of like, oh, this fucking kid, and we're letting him do it again. And he's like, hey, listen, the stuff for science, it's what led to the clone banks and what led to what was almost the destruction of our entire planet, let alone the absolute breaking of our society, as a people. And it's time that we separate ourselves from what it is we've been doing and try to progress and be better, do more. And that's because Kal-El was the one that was curious enough to show us that there could be a different and better way. And so all the time that's left to us, we're going to make sure that Krypton can see what we were in the past and how glorious it was, so we can hopefully make the future just as good. And it's really cool to see that without him even realizing it, Kal-El not only helped save Earth, but he may well have saved Krypton twice. And that's how we leave the story, circle and the end. And it's not without its flaws, but it's a really fun story.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely a little bit sloppy at some points, but the overall message that it has to go and give across, it comes across pretty well, and it's an enjoyable read. I thought it was I definitely don't regret reading it. The problems I have are just logistical, like why was his mom there, things like that. But otherwise, it's it was a very satisfying read.
Don't forget you criticized the financial system too.
Yeah, exactly. What is it? I mean, do they have Dogecoin at that point? Yeah.
No, it's all about Shiba Inu now.
Oh, is it? Okay.
The only thing we trade we trade hot dogs. It's a form of currency. 27 hot dogs equals roughly a nickel.
If the food was made of ribs, would you eat it?
Would you eat it?
Question. We'll move
on.
I
would. I need a bib. Yum.
I love that.
I agree with you. It was a good read. Yeah, definitely had some flaws, but I think the writing and definitely the uniqueness of it definitely made up for it.
Yeah. One of the things that I always gravitated towards with this particular story is when it comes to what if / Elseworlds type of stories, it's very easy, and this is largely due to the character's popularity. It's very easy to find a lot of Batman stories. It's like, oh, what if Bruce Wayne did this? What if Bruce Wayne that? Yada, yada, yada. Superman stories, not so much. There's not as many of them as there could be. And I found this one to be unique amongst them, because it's always, for the most part, doomed planet Krypton, scientists send Sun out, he lands on Earth. Okay, but now it's, what if the wind shifted and he landed just outside the Gotham City limits and he was raised by Thomas and Martha Wayne? Oh, what if the wind shifted slightly and he still landed in Kansas, but he was found by a Mennonite couple instead of the Kent?
Yeah. That's a really good one, though.
It is.
Yeah.
It's always that, what if he had hit that wormhole and it actually was also a time warp and he landed in the 18th century, and it's always like, what if he had landed in a different spot or at a different time on Earth? But the fact of the matter with this is, it's not Kal-El. It's not the offspring of Jor-El and Lara that's rocketed from Krypton before it explodes. This is an Earthling. This is a human kid who was born and named Clark Kent. And he's sent out and happens to land on Krypton, found by Jor-El and Lara, incidentally. And still develops into a good person, becomes a hero regardless of his his disability, really, as it was seen on Krypton. Instead of being Superman, we see him as Green Lantern. But then to go back to his world, his home of origin, and it's not something that actually makes him weaker, like Krypton and Kryptonite would do for Superman. It actually makes him stronger than he ever was when he was being raised on the only planet he ever knew. So, I mean, it's just like a juxtaposition. He really becomes two different superheroes within this story, but it's not an overlap that doesn't make sense. So I'm able to forgive some of the inconsistencies within it because of the core concept being so solid. And
It's definitely solid. I agree, and the message is there too. It's clear, and it's communicated by the author very clearly. So it's heavy concept, and you get it, like it sinks in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you guys both really enjoyed it. And that being said, I mean, readers really enjoyed this so much to the point that it was actually given a sequel, and that is not something that really ever happened with Elseworlds. And the follow up to it, which it will be, I can say at this point, it will be the next episode that we do, because it's only logical. It's called Superman Last Stand on Krypton. Yes, it's very cool. It does deal with the continuing story of Kal-El / Clark Kent on Earth, and how he is actually now acting as a liaison between Krypton and Earth, and what is actually happening on Krypton because of what we saw in the epilogue at the end of this series.
Oh, and I can't wait to see what Lex Luthor has to say about this.
You will be very interested, I think. If you know anything about Silver Age comics, I think you'll be very amused at one of the conceits for one of the bad guys in it. That's all I'll say until we get to this in a couple weeks.
Cool.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it, because that means that covering the next story will be fun and not painful. But I mean, any final thoughts? You guys pretty much all set with what you said and what you saw?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a straightforward read. It doesn't hit like the nail like you talked about. It doesn't hit like Kingdom Come, but I think the reason it doesn't hit like that is because it's singularly a Superman story. It's not like an ensemble cast. Like it's got its extra players, but those are all Superman book characters like Perry White and Lois Lane and stuff. So it doesn't hit on like a grander scale. Like if it maybe had some more characters in it, like JLA, maybe it would. But it's a good, fun read, and it's one of the more unique books I think I've ever read as an Elseworld.
Excellent.
Totally agree.
Outstanding. Like I said, I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed it. I had absolutely nothing to do with its creation. Just love spreading it around. And that with all that, I hope that everyone that's been listening, that they enjoyed us running through it. And if they're really curious about digging into it, please search it out. It's currently not available on like Comixology. You'd have to dig around to find it physically. I do think that it might end up in another Superman Elseworlds collection sooner rather than later, because DC has been putting those out for different characters. Like they have Batman Elseworlds collected, Superman, and Justice League. So keep your eyes peeled. Like I said, I think they're on like 2 or 3 volumes for Superman stories at this point. This would likely end up in one of the next ones coming out, probably 4 or whatever. But we can move on from here, and let's give our valedictions. So Justin Cooper, where can people check you out, man?
You can check me out on Facebook. You can look up Justin Cooper. I run the community Epic Shells, which is all Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles based. You can find me on Geek Life HQ and the other podcast that I do called The Epic Tales from the Sewers.
Excellent. All right. And Leo Pond.
Yeah, I do way too many shows, which is crazy. But there's also a lot of awesome people doing some pretty cool stuff. Head on over to thedorkening.com. It's a podcast network I run. Has about 40 shows on a network, and very cool stuff. And Brandon.
Yeah, hey, I'm Powerful Brandon, guys. You can join me, please, over at the Powers Combined Facebook group. Number one rule there is, don't be a jerk. We just have a lot of fun, share a lot of geeky info, memes, news, what have you. You can also follow me on Twitter at Brandon's Powers, and on Instagram at This Brandon Has Powers. I am also on the Dorkening podcast every Wednesday, each week at about 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And other than that, you can find me wherever you can pretty much locate fat guys trying to get fast food at any point. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. And everybody out there, have fun, be safe, and enjoy your comic books.